Hey guys, Zach here, and welcome back to another action figure review, and today we'll be taking a look at the Jurassic World Legacy Collection Attack Pack Dilophosaurus. Now, this figure is on the cheaper side. This figure actually didn't come from the Legacy Collection line, or it did, but this isn't actually a singular sold figure. This figure actually comes in a 5-pack with 4 other figures. It comes with 2 Raptors, a Gallimimus, and another starters, excuse me. It comes with another Dr. Grant figure. So, yeah, this figure you can't really buy on its own, unless you were to buy it loose on eBay, but if you do want this, like, from Target, then you might have to pay for the other figures in the set. And this is the only reason why I kind of bought this figure. I wasn't really a big fan of the Attack Pack Gallimimus or the Attack Pack Raptor. I wasn't really a fan of any of the figures in that set except for this, because this is the only like Jurassic Park style Dilophosaurus in the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom toy line. This is a repaint of an existing figure. The original one was more green and the painting on it was different, but this is the only like Jurassic Park like painted style of Dilophosaurus, so yeah. And honestly, this figure is not great. Now, we were supposed to get another Legacy Dilophosaurus, which I was actually really looking forward to. That figure actually looked great, and it still looks great, at least in terms of sculpt. Unfortunately, that figure got canceled, and instead of the traditional, Jurassic Park painted Dilophosaurus figure, instead we're getting a purple Dilophosaurus. So, yeah. Did you want a Jurassic Park style Dilophosaurus? No, how about Barney instead? So, yeah. Honestly, I don't know why they'd cancel that. To me, that seems like, it would be a pretty good idea. And every time I go into a Walmart or a Target, and every time I find that figure, there's always at least one there. No one ever buys it. People, like, I've seen, like, one person look at it, but people kind of just leave it alone. No one really buys it, so, yeah. And if you do like it, then, good for you, but, yeah, I'm not really interested in that purple Dilophosaurus. Maybe one day in the future we'll get a repaint of that figure that is, the original Jurassic Park Dilophosaurus, but as of now, this is pretty much the only Jurassic Park style Dilophosaurus there is, so, yeah. And honestly, this figure is not great. It's not terrible, but it's not good, so, yeah. Anyway, with all that out of the way, let's take a quick look at his accessory. And his accessory is actually kind of cool. It's basically a spitting projectile, which is cool, but unfortunately it's not really black like how it was in the movie. It's more of like a transparent green. I don't know why they made it green instead of black, but, it still kind of works, I guess, but yeah. And basically, there is a hole in his mouth right here, so you just want to plug that in, like so. And there you go. And that looks alright. Now, the thing that's weird to me is that this figure doesn't really shoot it out or anything like that. There's no button or anything like that, so it just kind of, like, sits there. In terms of display, I'd say then, that does look good, but in terms of, like, playability, I feel like that's kind of weird, but that's just me. Anyway, now for the Dilophosaurus itself. And first we'll take a quick look at the painting on this figure. And the painting on this figure is not good. Not terrible, but not good. At first glance it looks fine and it just looks, harmless. But when you take a closer look, it looks very weird. At least in the head anyway. But we'll get to the head. So most of the body is a kind of like a bright greenish color, which does look nice. And on the back here we have a darker shade of green. That looks nice. Fortunately, the toenails and the fingernails are not painted, so that is kind of a shame. But anyway, on the underside, we just have more green. Don't really have an underbody color. It's just, green. So, yeah. The frill is actually painted very nicely as well. I actually really like how the frill looks. Honestly, the frill is probably the best part about this figure. The rest of the figure is kind of weird, but yeah, no, the frill here looks very nice. All the yellows and all the reds, they look great. So yeah, the frill looks very nice. The inside of the mouth is painted pink, but the teeth don't look great at all. They actually look pretty bad, mainly because they didn't paint them all the way. As you can see, they only painted the very bottom of the teeth. A big truck just went by. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, no, they only painted the bottom of the teeth, and they just kind of left the top of it just green. And even on the bottom row of teeth, they kind of did that as well, which honestly is kind of a shame. And even on this side, it's also very noticeable. In fact, I'd even say that it's kind of worse on this side. So, yeah. That's honestly a shame. But anyway, the painting on the head on this side looks good. The eye looks like where it's supposed to be. And yeah, no, it looks good. The other side, they messed up because the eye is actually above where it's supposed to be. So, the eye is just now on, like, the eyebrow. So that's kind of weird. So, yeah. And that's actually kind of common for Jurassic World figures by Mattel. That actually happens a lot. In fact, that's actually on my Roarvor Allosaurus. And I've even seen like other figures, like later down the road when we review this figure, but the real feel Mosasaurus, I've seen pictures of that where they forgot to paint the pupils on it. So, yeah. With the Jurassic World line by Mattel, I'm not gonna lie, there are a good chunk of QC issues. So, yeah. Nothing extreme, but there are definitely some where it's definitely noticeable, but yeah. But honestly, that's pretty much it for the painting on this figure. And the painting on this figure, it's, besides the head, I'd say the frill looks fine, but the rest of the body doesn't look bad, it just looks kind of bland, so yeah. The painting on this figure isn't really great, so I'd say it gets, I'd say a pass and a half, but yeah. Anyway, now we'll take a look at the articulation, and the articulation on this figure is basic. So, the legs can move about like so. So, yeah. So can the arms, they can move about like so. And the frill can move backwards, which is kind of a cool way of kind of like tucking the frill away, but unfortunately it still is kind of noticeable, but yeah, no, it still looks nice. And of course this can come out, so yeah. I know I just put it back in, but we're just going to leave that out for the rest of the video, so yeah. And honestly, that's pretty much it for the articulation. Not really a lot of articulation in the tail. It does move, but it kind of just goes back into place shortly after, but yeah, no, the articulation on this figure, it's basic, so honestly, it gets a pass. I'd say it gets like 3/4 of a pass, but honestly, I've seen figures with less articulation than this, so I'd say the articulation we got here is alright, so it gets a pass. Anyway, now we'll take a look at the sculpt, and the sculpting on this figure is, again, kind of on the weaker side. The head, going back to the head, the sculpting looks, it almost looks like the Dilophosaurus from Jurassic Park, but there's something about it that just feels kind of off to me. It almost feels kind of cartoonish, and I'm not really the biggest fan of that, so yeah. Another thing I don't really like about the sculpt, I get that you kind of need this for the articulation and the frills, but for some reason, we just have two lumps right here on the side of the neck, both sides. As I said before, it's so that the frills can move, but it still looks very weird, so yeah. And I guess the worst thing about this sculpt, and something that plagues a lot of the Jurassic World figures by Mattel, is that this figure is kind of in a, like, it's kind of aggressively stanced, which I'm not really a big fan of. I said this in my review for the Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah 2-pack by Jack Specific, that, like, the thing I liked about Godzilla in that set was he was just, like, in a neutral pose. So that way, yeah, so, yeah. Here, the Dilophosaurus is kind of, like, aggressively stanced, so it's in kind of, like, a pose. If this was a statue, I'd say that'd be cool, but this is, like, you know, the limbs move and whatnot, and this is kind of, like, a kid's toy, so I feel like having dinosaurs aggressively stanced is kind of weird, so, yeah. And over time, I feel like that, you know, the Dilophosaurus will kind of, like, fall over, so, yeah. Not really a big fan of that. But other than that, the sculpting on this figure is alright. So, the sculpting as a whole, not terrible, but not good either. So, I'd say it gets a pass and a half. Anyway, now we'll take a look at the detailing on this figure. And the detailing on this figure, again, looks alright. Not great, just alright. But anyway, the detailing on the head looks alright. We do have some very small scales, which actually do look good. And even the crests, they look very nice as well. On the outside at least. But on the inside, they're not detailed at all. Which is kind of a shame. But anyway, the frill is detailed very nicely. And honestly, the best part of the figure. So, yeah, the frill looks nice. But, yeah. Anyway, going down to the body. The ribcage here actually looks pretty nice. But, you know, we still have some kind of bland looking creasing and scaling, which looks alright. So, yeah. The detailing on the feet look alright. And even on the hands, it's just alright. And at the bottom, we have the scan code. And we have the new Jurassic World logo right there. So, if you want to scan that in, then go ahead. And honestly, that's pretty much it for the detailing on this figure. Not bad. It's pretty bland, so I'd say it gets a pass and a half, so yeah. So, at the end of the day, should you get this? Well, honestly, that kind of depends on your preference, because there are many repaints of this figure out there, and I mean plenty. Something about Mattel, they absolutely love their repainted figures. So, yeah. There's like a blue one, there's a red one, I think. There's like a green one, but it's like a darker shade of green, but like the frill is painted like a different color. And yeah, no, there are a lot of different repaints of this figure. And again, it is honestly such a shame that the original Spitting Legacy Dilophosaurus was canceled in place of the purple Dilophosaurus, which honestly is kind of a shame, but hopefully in the future we will be getting a repaint of that. I'm hoping anyway, so yeah. I'm not going to get the purple one. I'm, going to wait to see if they make a Legacy one in the future, but yeah. Anyway, as I said before, this figure comes in a 5-pack with 4 other figures, so if you do want this figure, you might have to pay for the whole pack itself. And the whole pack itself costed like $35 at Target, because the Legacy line is exclusive to, almost said Larget for some reason. But yeah, no, Target, the set is exclusive to. And honestly, I wouldn't get that set. I'd say get it for the Dilophosaurus, but even then, the Dilophosaurus kind of, eh. The Gallimimus I wasn't really a big fan of. Neither was the Raptor. I wasn't really a big fan of that either. There was another Raptor in that set that looked cool, but I already have that. So, yeah. And there was a Dr. Grant figure that came in that set as well, but I found that a little unnecessary because, well, we already had a Dr. Grant figure before, so, yeah. Anyway, if you want to know how big this figure is, here it is next to Dr. Billy Grant. So, at the end of the day, I wouldn't get this. So, yeah. There are better Dilophosaur figures to get, so, yeah. Anyway, that is it for today. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next video. Peace, Zach out.